Hello and welcome to Deep Down. I'm your host, Jordan Hunt, and I'm here at The Place in London. Today, my guest is visionary, choreographer, dancer, podcaster, entrepreneur, Monique Jonas, a longtime friend of mine and collaborator on numerous projects, and I can't wait to share our conversation with you. Could you introduce yourself for people who might not know who you are? Because obviously I've known you a while.
Yes. I'm Monique Jonas. I was born in Jamaica and came to London when I was very, very little, but still very much feel the Jamaican blood and like aspects of Jamaican culture very much in my life, even though I am still firmly a London girl, West London girl to be specific as well. Yeah. And from age 7, I started on the Chance to Dance programme, which was run by the Royal Opera House, which is now the Royal Ballet and Opera from the name change. And they kind of go to your primary schools. It's slightly different structure nowadays, but they went to your primary school and you thought you were doing a PE class, and I was just having a good old time doing some skips and bits. And then they select some of us from our primary school and give us free ballet classes weekly and help nurture you into dance. So that's how I kind of got into it. But my mum told me that when I was little, if there was music on the TV, I used to be dancing around the living room. This was pre-Chance to Dance, so I guess there was some sort of affinity to movement in there from the beginning.
It was always there.
It was always there, but I don't have a memory of doing that, but apparently I did that a lot when I was little. And so I've stayed in the dance world pretty much majority of my life, and now I dance professionally, variety of different companies, but also like guesting in different spaces, shorter projects. I have my own dance company now called Jona Dance, which I started in 2019, which feels like yesterday, but it was a little while ago now that I think about it. But it just allowed me to choreograph and explore what I had to say as a choreographer, maybe. That's a good way to put it. And also get into the TV film space, doing some movement direction. So not necessarily having to be the person on stage, the person on camera, but facilitating and encouraging other people in that space. And yeah, that's kind of what I do.
I mean, that is some of what you do.
It is, yeah.
I know it's not exhaustive, and we'll get onto that.
Okay.
Because one word that I think of when I think of you is versatility.
Oh, let's see. My favourite.
Maybe let's frame how we know each other.
Yeah.
Because we've known each other almost as long as I've known my partner Chris.
Pretty much, actually.
Yeah, which was 2018. So it'll be almost 7 years this spring.
Time has flown.
Yeah.
Time has flown. But also it's like, with you, because I've known you for such a long time, the beginnings of where we met are always slightly blurred, because I'm just like, yeah, you know, it's just like cemented in the memory of like, yeah.
So, I mean, because we discussed just before we started recording where we actually might have first met, which was news to you.
It was news to me. I didn't realise.
Where did you think we first met?
I wondered if it was the Theo Adams project.
Right, yes.
I thought like
That's probably the first project that we did together.
Yes, that was the first one. Because I remember I was in Miami the week before rehearsals, and I got given a script to learn because we were doing some lip syncing as part of the show. Oh, yeah. And I was away that week, and everyone was like, yeah, it's fine, you can be away as long as you're here for these dates. Yeah. I think I might have sent a picture to Chris of like the sun or something. It was like, I hope she's learning the lyrics. And I was like, don't worry, I am. And then I came back the next week and we got into rehearsals.
Do you remember what that song was? I think it might have been a mashup of 2 different songs about being gorgeous.
Oh my God. Yes.
I forget the titles, but they're so camp. And the punchline of the songs are, I am gorgeous.
I'm lucid because we had the fabric and we put our face through the fabric and then we'd lip sync. Yeah, it's coming back. That was the first time I thought that we had properly met, but that's probably the first time we had more lengthy conversations. Yeah. Maybe that's why that's cemented. But I didn't realise that we met at the show that Ariel made, that both Chris and I were dancing in. Yeah. Lots of varied expectations.
Yeah. Rosemary Branch.
I mean, remembered, yeah.
Well, I know that because, a few of my friends, interestingly, in theatre and music have connections with their My friend Zoe Palmer's mum, Cess, used to kind of curate and run stuff there.
Right. It's a cute venue, actually.
Yeah.
It was actually really nice.
It's very intimate.
It's super intimate, but actually I kind of really like that. I could see everyone in the audience, and with that type of piece and the character that I was playing with so much eye contact, I was like having a field day. It's like going to stare you down.
That's why you kind of jumped off the stage at me. Not literally, obviously.
No.
Because considering how small the venue was, there were quite a lot of dancers on stage. It wasn't just like a duet or a solo.
No. We had sections where all of us were on stage, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of moving around like this. It's like a group and then shifting.
Yeah.
And
Traffic was maybe a bit of an issue, but...
Yeah, a little bit. But I remember there were these stairs that went right through the centre and we could like enter and exit.
Oh, yeah.
And I had an entrance where it was like 8 walks and it was like myself and Inesh and we were just like walking down and it was like 1, 2,
As in, like,
3.
you had 8 steps and then you were on the stage.
Yeah.
That's how small the room was.
Yeah. But we're like walking in between the audience, like down
Yeah.
the stairs, so that everyone's sat either side of us. And it was like in character. It was like super stone-faced. The whole time, just like, yeah.
I just remember, your eyes. Because we were so close to the stage, and I thought, who is that?
That's quite an iconic beginning.
Oh my gosh. Because obviously I was there to see Chris, who was also great. And as soon as he got off stage, I think the first thing I said was, who is that? And also, well done.
Yeah.
And immediately I thought, I need to tell Theo Adams about Monique Jonas.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Because actually, I'm really glad that you did, because up until the point of working with Theo, I, and yourselves and the whole team, I hadn't done anything that required like acting or theatrical expressions and like embodiment.
Well, not that anyone had required that of you, but you've always brought it.
I will take that.
That's what I mean. It's like
Right.
you were doing it anyway.
Oh, interesting. Because it was like I was dancing with Richard Alston at the time.
Yeah.
And the focus on that was the technique, the line, the essence of the piece, group work and things like that. It didn't necessarily require too much storytelling in the face.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I'd been doing for the past like 2-3 years. And so it was actually quite nerve-wracking walking into Theo Adams' company space, especially because like, a lot of people knew each other, so there was already a bit of comfort there. Having to kind of like lip sync and go to the extreme with certain things to make it make sense for the arc of what we were doing. But it was quite liberating at the same time, because I was like, oh, no one's ever asked me to do this, so this is quite fun, but also scary because it's the first time doing it.
I mean, and I think we probably just assumed you could do it.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't audition you or anything, did we?
No.
I just thought, Monique's amazing.
Yeah.
Theo's like, great.
Yeah.
For him, it's all about casting. And if one of his team, you know, then we all understand what he looks for in a person.
Yes.
Or a performer.
Yeah.
And I was like, she's just got the star quality.
Oh, I love that.
I was like, great, fine. Booked.
It's amazing. I mean, yeah. But it was great, because then it gave me the confidence to just like go to this extreme and not think about, oh, my arm needs to be here, my leg needs to be here, and this is what we're presenting in this sort of space, you know? And it was just like, oh, that's cool.
Was that difficult to switch lanes, or was it? I mean, you said it was liberating, but
Yeah, I don't know if it was difficult, but I think in rehearsals I was definitely a bit more reserved. And actually, I've realised that about myself when I'm in new spaces. I'm actually a little bit more reserved before I'm like, oh, okay, I'm here and I believe I can do that. So it's interesting that you said, oh, you've got the star quality. I was like, I wish I believed that back then.
oh,
Yeah, because I was just like, oh, okay, cool, this is new, and everyone's really going for it. And I was like, it's actually gonna be worse if I don't go for it. It's one of those things that the commitment to it is what makes sense. The lack of commitment to the story or what the character or the lip syncing actually makes it worse. In a way.
You have to be fully sincere. It's not serious. It's very playful, but you have to be committed.
You know?
Sincere about like how bonkers it is.
Exactly.
Not seriously bonkers, but
there's like a fine line. That if you like exaggerate trying to be funny also doesn't work. To an extent. Depends what people are looking for. So was it hard? Perhaps not, but there was like an internal dialogue that was definitely like, just go for it. Just go for it. And also not knowing what just going for it would look like for me until I did. But then during the show I had the best time.
You seem to.
I had the best time. There's something about live performance, whether it's in a theatre space, there's definitely an energy for me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
It's like showtime, let's go, let's have a great time. It's just like buzzing. And I got a tambourine at the end. I was like having time with the tambourine. I really, really remember that.
Gosh, that was a show we did for MAC, makeup brand at 180 Strand.
Yes.
Bonkers. We were doing so many bonkers shows back then. Like we did the closing event for Annabelle's club in Mayfair.
Oh, wow.
Where, I mean, you know, the budget was always tiny. It was like £712, something random.
That's so specific.
And we just spent it all on confetti.
Oh, really? That's kind of amazing.
I know, but the great thing was like, this venue is not going to be needed tomorrow because they're moving, so we can literally do whatever we want and like make a mess.
Yeah.
Which is always very exciting.
Fun. And there was that one video.
Yes, but we got you back for a couple of things after that,
Yeah.
because obviously you're amazing. We did
Yeah.
something with a video for Paloma Faith.
Yes, we did but there was a video before that, and I really remember like drawing red lipstick.
Oh, the thing with Ismaya.
Yes,
Ismaya French.
must have been that.
I wasn't at that shoot, but I remember
It must
watching
have
it.
been. And it was like
Do you remember
filmed.
what it was?
No, I just really remember like having to do like this absurd sort of like laughter thing, and then also just like drawing red lipstick. And then there's a moment where I'm just like so into my eyes, it's just really piercing at some point. I don't really remember what it is. I've just got that clip in my head. And then there's also the Paloma Faith video, and that was also a fun day. So dancing outside.
That was so hot. We had two shoot days in the middle of August, and it was like 32 degrees.
Yeah.
We're outside the whole time.
Yeah.
The video is great fun and bonkers, but I do remember thinking, ooh,
Yeah.
what we do for art.
Exactly. The commitment levels are kind of like unrivaled outside of the art space, kind of.
I know,
you know?
right? If people knew. Literal sweat.
Yeah.
And hopefully not too much blood and
Right.
tears.
That part.
Many tears. And then we also did the Brit Awards
We did do the Brit Awards.
with Years and Years.
Yes.
Ollie Alexander, as he was then.
I had
with-
these gorgeous long sleeves
Ooh.
as part of my costume /
Did
outfit.
we get to see them? I remember we were all stood in a kind of a maze.
Yes.
Designed by Ez Devlin.
Yes, and that maze was fun because like to the left of me was
Yeah.
Elton John.
Right.
And we had to like bob up at different points on different counts. And
Yeah.
I was like, as if I'm just doing this and Elton John is right there. I was like, that's quite iconic. And then these sleeves, and we had some like movement that was really, and so I felt really bad for anyone who was stood next to me because they may have been caught by the sleeve, but I was also like, I have to commit to the choreography, so it's
Yeah.
not intentional.
Not your problem.
Yeah, well, it's like, I'll be mindful, I'll try and do it
Yeah.
on the diagonal, but
Of course.
also like, if I'm not doing this choreography properly, that's not really, I'm paid to do it properly, so I'm gonna try and do it properly,
Yeah.
you know?
You know what your contract is?
Yeah, and I was just like, you can go forward, I'm happy. I'm also very happy to be at the back of things, like I
Yeah.
really don't need to be like front center for any of those stuff. So I was like, with these sleeves, you can put me at the back, that's okay. But I'm gonna do it full out.
And that was a really weird year. It was like the COVID year.
Was it?
Because it was filmed, but
Yeah.
there was no audience.
There was no audience, but it looked like there was an audience
There
when it was
was.
aired.
There was an audience for the event, like a kind of a bubbled audience or something. The government was doing an experiment, and the Brits was the experiment.
Oh,
the guinea
really?
pigs. But all the performers were kind of not put in the line of danger. So the actual literal performance itself
Yes,
was filmed for TV later,
yes.
as though live.
Yeah, because then I saw it, I was like, it looks as if there's like a whole, well, it sounds as if there's like a whole audience around us.
Yeah.
But obviously we knew that there wasn't, because it was just us.
Yeah. It's quite hard to bring it, isn't it?
Mm.
But it was maybe useful, the fact that we knew we only had 2 takes with Elton, because he's Elton John, he doesn't need to do more than 2 takes.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been willing to do more than 2 takes.
Yeah. The first take was him learning the words, and then the second take was it.
100%. Do you remember he had that little buggy that would take him from backstage to the stage?
Yes.
I really remember
If
that.
I were Elton John, I'd have a buggy too.
Really?
Absolutely.
It's like 8 steps.
I remember accidentally bumping into him as I was kind of like running from front of house to backstage,
Yeah.
thinking, oh, sorry, and then realising, oh God, I just almost knocked over.
Elton John.
Living legend. Interestingly, you said that you don't particularly need to be front of the stage, front and centre. I definitely resonate with that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you have carved a space for yourself with your company, Jona Dance,
True.
which I totally also get. From one perspective, you could think that, oh, well, that's because this person wants themselves to be the centre of their own universe.
Right.
But actually, it seems like a very generous space that you've created.
I try for Jona Dance to not be about just me.
Yeah.
actually. And I think it was really important for me that it wasn't just about me, so that it carried my name, but is also not the exact replica of my name. So my surname is Jonas.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
Jonah is close enough so that it's like it can be connected to me. But I'm thinking like beyond my time in the arts,
Yeah.
does it have longevity? Hopefully. I would love for it to like have its own name where it's, I definitely didn't want it to be like Monique Jonas Dance Company. Like I was like, it doesn't
Yeah.
need to hold that, but something that connects it so that if, for example, 10 years down the line and it's really booming and I decide I don't want to be an artistic director anymore,
Yeah.
someone else can come in and it's still connected
Yeah.
to everything I've put into it, but also can be its own sort of entity. Because Jona Dance, I want it to be for people, to uplift people, to offer opportunities in the arts for people, to tell different stories, for a sense of community, to know that hopefully you would feel valued if you're coming to work with us. Like, it's about kind of like giving / serving / sharing with the wider dance industry, rather than I'm a choreographer and I'm now creating work. Because I, for a long time, didn't think I was creative. When I was at Rombo School, I didn't think I was a creative person. I know.
What?
I didn't think I was creative. I didn't think I could choreograph. Because we had people like Ariel Smith, Charlotte Edmonds, people who are choreographing and establishing themselves as choreographers who are
Or
in my
maybe
year group.
People who call themselves choreographers.
Precisely.
Because they've decided.
Precisely
Well, no,
that.
I mean, they're wonderful choreographers.
Yeah, but there was a conviction and there was action that went alongside their conviction that supported their work as a choreographer. Right. Whereas I think for me, I was just like, oh, well, I'm not as creative in the same way that I'm seeing my peers around me be creative. So therefore, I thought I wasn't creative. I obviously realised that's not how it works, because creativity presents itself in so many different ways, and that the way that I create is just what makes sense to my brain and what makes sense to what I'm inspired by and how I communicate and how I dance and so on and so forth. But back then I just was like, oh no, I'm not a choreographer. I must be just a dancer. So I pursued the dance route.
Do you think that the umbrella of Jona Dance has given you the freedom to just try stuff that, like being a choreographer, that maybe you didn't realise you could do?
Yes. 100%. I was like, there's no hesitation on that at all. It's taught me a lot about myself, and it's taught me not to limit what I think I am and just try, because what if it works out? So did I think
brave.
I mean, yeah, it's like feel the fear, do it anyway is the thing that I tell myself. I'm like, I'm scared. Gonna do it. I'm here, showed up. Just try. Because like, what if it does work? And movement direction is definitely one of those things. Definitely learn on the job what movement direction is, like the terminology.
What is it?
Well,
what do you think it is?
Well, the biggest question. There's so many conversations at the minute about like movement direction and its importance and or not in the space.
It is suddenly a thing.
It
like
is.
curators were suddenly a thing a decade ago in
Yes.
art galleries.
For me, movement direction is anything that facilitates movement to communicate the director or creative director's vision on camera. And so in some cases that's a choreographed dance, in which you'll be movement directing and choreographing. In other cases, it's sometimes I was on set for a music video and we had maybe 12 extras in like a big room, and I needed to make the room look like it was busy. And so the movement direction was coordinating who's crossing the screen, who's wiping the camera, what's in frame, how many people do we need to position here and there, okay, what's the camera action on this take, and then filling the screen so that it makes sense that this person crossed here, so I remember that they're here, so they can't restart over here on another take.
Right.
So
that's a whole job. That occupies one person's whole brain.
Yes, quite literally. And
to be able to...
often it's on the spot, just kind of like problem solving. But then it could also be, well, I had another film which was shot by Eda Mornu, who's a lovely director, and it was called Butterfly Effect, with actors, and it was a guy who hadn't really danced before. And on set, I was teaching him the basics of classical ballet.
Whoa.
Because there was a scene the next day in a ballet class, because he aspired to do some dancing, but it was an unfamiliar space, so he needed to have some sort of movement language there. And I remember just grabbing him when he wasn't needed on set to deliver his other scenes that day, and just outside.
The mini class?
Yeah, honestly, like, this is first position, this is a demi-plie, this is first position with your arms, we're going to find a retire, let's try and see, like, honestly, sometimes it's that.
That's crazy.
And other times it's like, can you bring your left shoulder, like, back, because in the framing, this makes more sense.
Yeah.
Kind of just takes that off the first AD having to do that so they can continue to run the day. It looks very, very different from project to project, but I really enjoy it, actually.
That's probably one of the things I didn't know about. I mean, I can imagine you doing it, but you know, because our paths have touched on so many projects,
That's
I
true.
remember all of those.
Yeah.
But of course I don't see what you're doing outside.
Yeah.
Except that I hear about your podcast.
Oh, yes.
Which is very public facing. It's
yes.
fantastic.
The latest venture.
Yeah. Which is another point of connection for us.
Indeed. So my podcast
Plug.
is Candid Convos with Jona Dance, and it's a seasonal podcast that literally talks about anything and everything about the everyday runnings of the contemporary dance industry. So it could be auditions, it could be what we eat, it could be confidence, it could be a project or a job that we did, how we manage money. I just feel like the more that I teach in different spaces and the older I get, and there's people going into schools, higher education and graduating, and they're asking for advice in the industry, I'm noticing similar questions. And I have one experience, but someone else who had a different route will have a different experience. And it's just good to kind of share those experiences to help others who are coming up in the industry as well as those who are already in the industry and trying to figure things out. I felt like a lot of us have to figure things out individually or within a really small network. There's a lot of shared knowledge in there, and just by having conversations, some people will be like, oh, I didn't realise that you also felt that. I didn't realise that you also experienced this, or you know, went through this experience. This is what I'm experiencing right now. And then people feel sometimes, from what I've heard from the feedback so far, people feel connected to it because they can relate to the experience, and then it starts new conversations and hopefully gets people connecting with each other so that we're a bit more of a closer-knit community rather than small pockets just trying to make it work. But yeah, I didn't know anything about podcasting before starting. I just knew that I wanted to have some conversations and I wanted to be open and honest about things, especially when it came to money. We don't really talk about money in the contemporary dance world, and it's a topic that makes a lot of people do this because we're taught, well, at least when I was training, you're taught not to talk about how much you get paid and are you on the same salary, and if they give you this, you kind of just say yes rather than actually no, this is my day rate.
Yeah.
Actually, the confidence to maybe be bold within that. So
I've been party to some of those conversations on the other side with my partner Chris, who used to be a dancer.
Yes.
And so I kind of understand that from my perspective, the musicians' union is really good.
Yes.
And there are kind of set rates for everything, minimum suggested rates. And orchestras as units are very strong. You know,
yes, they are.
They'll stop rehearsing exactly on the second of
Yes.
the dot when their break is supposed to start, and they'll all put their bows down.
Yep, I know that very well. Been mid-lift, mid-rehearsal when they've decided to stop, and you're like, oh, yeah, I guess it's break time. It's happened many times. And we're looking at the rehearsal director. Do we continue? There's 2 minutes.
Do you continue? I know that dancers have equity.
We do.
Union. I mean, not to be too political, but do you feel supported or unionised, or how strong do you feel?
So equity has been good for setting rates as like a minimum.
For you, setting your rates? Or?
Well, no, setting the industry standard
Right,
rates.
okay.
And, you know, they have their kind of like booklets / leaflets that say, well, if you're working on a funded film, this is what you should be expecting per day for X, Y, and Z. If you're in a theatre with a certain amount of seats in the audience, and this is the rate, and it kind of like varies. I think the trouble is there's, in my opinion, and also from my own experience, a lot of us didn't know our rights. We didn't know what these rates were coming out of school.
Yeah.
So your interest is just like, I just want to build momentum, I want to, you know, build connections with people, and so you accept work for free because of exposure. And
say yes to everything.
Yes, and then you kind of just accept these rates. And if you go into a company, I then think you get a better sense earlier of like the sort of rates that companies are paying based on experience, based on how long you've been in said company, and so on and so forth. But it does vary on an individual to individual basis, which is a little bit harder to navigate. I feel like a lot of us don't know our rights with what you can stand up for based on what equity allows. I think it's very good for the TV film space, because definitely been on contracts for a film, for example, and those who were on equity got paid accordingly, and those who weren't on equity got paid a slightly lower rate, and it's like, how is that possible?
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's cheeky.
Yeah, because a lot of contemporary dance, it's changing now, but we didn't really use agents. And so like musical theatre, acting, they use a lot of agents, and they deal with the negotiations. As a contemporary dancer, most of the time you're doing the negotiations yourself. And I've been agent-free most of my career, so I kind of felt like I needed to learn quickly. Like, what's an appropriate day rate? What is this? So there's support in some things, but I think also we don't know the support we're entitled to sometimes moving forward, and it takes someone who does know for us to be like, oh, actually, I can advocate for myself here.
Yeah. Do you think that that's the school's responsibility?
It's tough because the schools...
I do.
Huh? You do?
I do, yeah.
The reason I say it's tough because the industry's changing so much. They're trying to keep up with what the industry is looking for whilst training like foundations and what the industry need, but they need it to be validated by university, so there's an academic component as well. Does it always prepare you for the freelance life? No. Do you get taught about your taxes? No. Do you get taught about like... No, but you don't. You kind of just graduate and you're like, and then someone's like, have you filed your tax? No. How do I do that? And you
do
just...
I have to?
Yeah. You know, when do I do
not earning
that?
enough.
Yeah. Exactly, all of those things. So I think it would be great for the school to touch on the realities of freelancing and the things that we need to know. Is it their entire responsibility? I'm unsure because...
That's very diplomatic.
I can use Rambert School as an example because that's where I went. Our schedule was crazy. I have no idea where that would have fit in a timetable, to be honest. With extra choreography rehearsals until 8 p.m, you know, there's choreographic shows that we're doing. We're off taking workshops and things. I think, thinking back to it, I don't know where it would have fit in the timetable. That
timetabling, that kind of like time boxing, it's making a connection for me about boundaries.
Yes.
Because at the moment, for the past year or so, I've been trying to work on my boundaries with myself, you know, where I battle myself and don't give myself enough rest time or whatever, being quite introvert. And then also with other people. And maybe the school needs to work on its own boundaries to think the overview here, what do we need to prepare these young people for? And we need to really kind of schedule some time for these more real, practical...
Absolutely. I love that you said boundaries. I'm really hot on that at the moment as well. Yeah. I think it's because, again, it's the privilege to be able to tour for so long in the industry. You know, there's not a lot of companies at the moment, especially post-pandemic, that are touring as extensively as some that I've been able to be part of. But the sacrifice of that is the release of your schedule and the ability to make said boundaries in order to prioritise rest. If I have 8 shows a week, I'm contracted to do those 8 shows a week, and that means Tuesday to Sunday I'm required to be in the theatre, which is wonderful, but it means that Monday is now my designated day of rest. And if you are slightly chaotic like me and doing other things outside of performing, that day is your day to do the other things.
Catch up.
As well. So I think since my last tour, that finished August 2024, something along those lines, and allowing myself to be a bit more freelance in London and rooted in London, I'm so happy to take charge of my schedule. Say, for example, like I no longer work on Sundays. That's the day that I don't accept work, which is quite hard to say no to on a freelance space. But that's my day to just rest, to just be, not house stuff, no washing and all that. I mean, if you need to do it, that's fine. But a day to just be and actually slow down.
How did you arrive at Sunday?
Sunday is my day. I mean, Is
it just unlikely to get other work? Or?
No, not necessarily. Actually, a lot of work, because I teach at some of the youth programmes on the CAT schemes and like artistry, youth dance, and most of their teaching stuff is on a Sunday.
Right.
So actually saying no to working on a Sunday means I was saying no to work.
Yeah.
Which maybe is a bit risky, but actually I think if I'm rested, whatever I'm doing throughout the week makes a lot more sense. And also for me personally, I'm Christian, so then the Sunday is the day where I'm like, cool, that's the day that I rest or see family or do that sort of stuff. It just kind of naturally arrived. As I don't really want to be working on Sunday. So I'm not going to work on a Sunday, and hopefully there's another day in the week that I can have as like my life day of see friends
life day.
My life day.
It doesn't even have to be you just in bed watching Netflix, just being a human and not working.
Exactly, all of those things, and knowing boundaries also when it comes to pay. I feel I'm quite hot on that at the minute as well. Like, oh, I can pay you this. And I was like, that's great. If I feel like I wish to invest in it for that money, then that's absolutely fine. And if I don't, then I'm okay to be like, actually, this is my day rate. If you're able to meet this, that's fine. If not, maybe we can look at doing a half day for something.
Yeah.
You know, and not feeling bad for saying that, because it's like I want to honour the work that you're doing, but also I have to honour my own time.
Yeah.
Whereas,
You're valuing yourself, not just financially knowing your worth, but spiritually.
Yeah.
How do you think you arrived at this position where you're finally confident enough to turn down work? Has that been a journey, or did you always?
Oh, actually, I know when there was a turning point.
Yeah.
The pandemic. Seeing how the industry just was completely shut down.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we're in our living rooms trying to do a ballet bar next to our kettle and our microwave and our fridge. And how for a lot of people it was a complete loss of income.
Yeah.
Completely. Dance is a hobby for a lot of people. And it's interesting when your hobby is your work / your career and your passion. So outside of that, you don't always have a lot of time, spare resources to build your life outside of dance.
Yeah.
And the pandemic really gave me space and time to discover other things that I like to do, because I wasn't able to pour the energy that I had been into dancing and creating and doing all of this stuff. I realised that I am not what I do. What I do is not who I am.
Yes.
And for a long time, being a dancer, being in contemporary, being as part of a company was the central part of my identity. And the pandemic was a real necessary shift mentally for me to be like, no, this is what I do and I enjoy it and I love it and I love sharing it with other people, but it's not who I am. So who am I outside of this? And then it started this journey of like, what do I like outside of dance? What do I want to do with my free time? How do I want to connect with other people? And I realised I love DIY and doing, you know.
I think I know that.
You do know that.
I love it
IKEA,
too.
B&Q, all of those places, absolute besties where possible. You know, painting, I find it very therapeutic, like putting on the frog tape, the green tape, and having like Cleo Soul or some like really chill music. And I'm just in my absolute element, because it's pouring creativity into another aspect of my life, or going on walks. I love doing that. I like reading. I love flowers. There's just like small details of my life of like building who I am outside of what I do became really important, which then allowed me to give myself the confidence to be like, actually, I've been working in this industry for close to 10 years professionally now, and these are the rates that I think I would like to propose. And if this works for your budget, fantastic. And if it doesn't, then thank you so much. Hopefully there's another project we can be involved in. And I just have to not be afraid of losing work, because it will always come.
Yeah. I remember you chatting about that on your podcast about, maybe it was with Vidya, about that fear of, you know, you're taught by uni to just say yes to everything because you're only as good as your next gig.
Exactly. I don't
I've
believe
definitely
that.
tried to, I think I'm navigating, but maybe on the other side of that kind of journey myself. Confidently turning things down.
Yes.
Saying, actually, no, that's not my place of magic anymore.
Yeah.
Not because I'm not interested in trying it, but I'm just so saturated and I wouldn't give my best.
Exactly. And I think it's to know that. Otherwise we get close to burnout, we get close to running ourselves down, and then you're already pouring from an empty cup, and then you're emptying your cup even more. And it's like, well, what am I hoping to give if my vessel is empty, essentially? Yes. Taking the time to say no is scary when you do it, and definitely so much rumination after, just being like, should I have turned that down? Oh my gosh, what if I don't find anything else? Like, those thoughts are definitely there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sitting here being like, yeah, I turned it down and I'm fine. No, I'm definitely like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm not sure what's happening for the next few weeks work-wise, and I just had work and I turned it down for a variety of different reasons. But I've learned to kind of rest in that a little bit more and be like, oh, all right, this is what I've decided to do, and actually it was hard to make the decision, but it's going to benefit me in the long run. And so going with that. But I really had to fight the you're only as good as your next gig mentality. For example, like I played a principal role with Matthew Bourne's New Adventures, and in Romeo and Juliet, it's wonderful, you know, you're playing the role of Juliet. It holds a lot of value externally. And for me, I wanted to get to a place where if I was ensembled, would I still feel valued on stage? And I want to still feel valued on stage. So this whole like, you're only as good as your next gig is like, I don't necessarily believe that, because I might be a principal one day and I might be an ensemble the next day. And actually both of those are fine, because if both of those things are fulfilling me creatively and I'm able to pour and do all of that, then that's what the value is, not, oh, you're a principal and you're really visible and that's really seen. Or if you're in a company one day and you're not the next day, it doesn't mean that what you're doing outside of the company life holds any less value. Sometimes it could be more valuable if it has an outreach aspect, or that it's on a topic that you're really passionate about and you get to really invest in. You know, it's just affording the value myself rather than relying on what other people think is valuable or what they hold to a high esteem. And that's taken me a while to get to that place, but I'm learning to kind of activate that a little bit more now that I'm doing a lot more independent freelance work as opposed to company-based performing work. Yeah.
How was that journey doing Juliet? Because it was a long tour, wasn't it? In terms of what you were just talking about.
Yeah, it was a real...
External value versus internal.
Absolutely, because I noticed, and it's really lovely, I think people are well-intentioned, but you know, you receive more flowers, quote unquote, because it's visibly successful to others and what they deem as successful in the arts as a dancer. Oh, you're the principal, you're playing Juliet and you're on a world tour. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. But the person who's ensemble is also doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, we're all required for this show to make sense. You know,
same call time,
same call
amount of
time,
effort.
exactly. You know, it's
because you've also done call
Yeah.
with Matthew Bourne, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah. When I first joined, it was in 2019, and I was the ensemble in Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
So it was quite nice to come back in 2023 is when we first started it again.
Yeah.
As a principal, that's a lovely sense of like journey and like progression in terms of the company and my artistry and also my confidence. But the work that I did behind the scenes mentally was that in my head, I'm not better than anyone else in this company in terms of like, just because I'm a principal, it doesn't mean that I'm above or anything, you know, because you're putting in work, I'm putting in work. It just means that in the show, I have a responsibility to tell the story of Juliet. And that responsibility might look greater in terms of stage time, but it doesn't mean that your responsibility in your ensemble track is not relevant. And because I also played my ensemble role whilst I was on tour as well. So some days I was Juliet and in the evening I would be on ensemble. And it was like, do I still feel fulfilled if I'm not getting my flowers at the end? It's a massive check to the ego, absolutely. Massive check, but I think it's necessary for me.
Yeah.
Because I just was like, yeah, well, I'm not any less than because I'm ensemble tonight. I don't need to tell people, oh, I also played Juliet, that's great. Today I was ensemble. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Do you think the other dancers shared that kind of humility?
The industry is a funny one because ultimately it feels on like the large scale that everyone's thinking about their own personal journey in it, and understandably, you know,
we're the centre of our own universe.
Exactly that. And sometimes it's remembering that my universe is not the only universe that exists. My goal is this and I'd like to achieve this and da-da-da-da, but this is someone else's goal and they also want to achieve this and they also want to do that. So I think we were very lucky on this Romeo and Juliet tour in the sense that I wouldn't say there were any like crazy egos where it was like, oh, I'm this and da-da-da. I personally didn't experience that with any of the cast members, so I was very, very happy about that, happy to support each other. When people went on for first cover roles, second cover roles, I'm very happy to support you because this is your journey, this is your time, this is your show, it's about you. I hope that sentiment is shared amongst more people, but I'm also aware that everyone is also focused on their own journey and they want to progress too, so I think you'll probably see elements of both.
It's funny, I probably know most of the other principals, just knowing Chris, who also had some time in New Adventures.
Yeah.
And everyone's so nice.
Yeah.
I feel that you seem part of a particular generation of dancers and people in the dance industry, at least, who are maybe on a different mental trajectory to those that came 10, 20 years before you. Maybe it's because you come from a different generation educationally, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And I think it's that thing, isn't it? Every generation has their own sort of like characteristics they become known for. I'm not sure. I'm intrigued to see what sort of like legacy our generation of dancers like leaves and or the impression it gives to those coming up.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I don't know. I hear more of the positive, thankfully.
Good, good. It's not like whether there will be a dance industry by the time they've graduated.
I mean, that's a very valid question. No, it's not that people aren't creating, it's the landscape of the industry has just shifted so much, and funding has changed.
Yeah.
What people are interested in dancing has changed massively. There was a huge modern dance type like surge while I was training, and so your Graham technique, your Cunningham dance technique, limo, like these techniques were like really prominent in most of the training facilities, whereas now the approach seems quite different. There's a focus on diversifying, so there's a lot of hip hop coming into contemporary dance schools. At the place, I believe they were doing like Kathak classes, which is the Indian classical dance form, art form even, because it's storytelling. So I feel like it's encompassing a lot of different things with less of a singular focus on modern dance techniques. So I'm really intrigued. I have no idea where the industry's going to go. I'm part of it, but I have no idea.
No, of course. I think you're part of driving it. Maybe you don't realise that.
That's crazy.
I know,
It's
isn't it
very
crazy?
scary to think about that.
Don't overthink it.
Yeah, I won't. I was like, I'm going to bypass that thought.
Maybe the thread is that you have to be versatile to survive.
I think so.
Because, we do need to pay the rent at the end of the day.
Exactly, we do. And, we're based in London, so we
expensive.
live in London prices
Yeah.
and the London experience, which is just expensive.
How do you feel about your own versatility? And I ask that because when I trained as a composer, graduated 20 years ago, it was expected that then you would just be a composer for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and follow that path.
Yeah, and as soon as I graduated, I joined a band.
I love that.
And that's obviously where my curiosity took me. I don't know that it wasn't satisfying because from my teenage years, all I'd wanted was to be a composer.
Yeah.
And I think probably I was just lucky that my needs were sated whilst I was studying. I'd had some amazing opportunities.
Fantastic.
I had no enterprising spirit whatsoever. I didn't understand that then I had to drive my own career as soon as I graduated. So I did wander in the dark a little bit. But yeah, what about your own versatility?
I think my versatility has come from my curiosity from a young age. So at school, I was towards the upper end of my academic year group in primary school. And so I've always had an interest across the spectrum of all the different subjects. I liked maths. Actually, I really liked maths. And I really loved English. But I was also fascinated by history and also geography. Funnily enough, the one subject that didn't take to me so much was music. And that is the biggest driving force within my dance now. It's crazy. And so then when I went to Arts Educational School, London, the one in Chiswick, that was my secondary school and sixth form. So I was there for 7 years. And it was a wonderful, bizarre combination of I'd go to school at 8:30 or whatever time we started, and I'd have maths, double period of maths in the morning and a break, and then a double period of history, and then I'll have lunch, then I'll do a tap class in my lunch break, and then and then I'd have ballet in the afternoon, and then I might finish with geography, and then after in the evening I would do jazz.
So weird.
So it's my day was just like this, and then we did Lambda exams, so we learned Shakespeare, and that's where you go into an examiner and you recite 2 monologues and and there were musical theatre shows. I wasn't on the musical theatre course, but you kind of get roped into doing it, this kind of all-rounder mentality has been there since age 11, really.
Okay.
And I loved it. I loved that I could do ballet and tap and jazz and contemporary. Contemporary was one of the ones that I learnt later. So I actually started in classical ballet, which was crazy, on the Chance to Dance programme.
I can believe that, seeing you dance.
Really?
Yeah.
I will take that.
You have such poise.
Oh, I will take that. Because I'm constantly in spaces where people say that I don't look classical. So that's really interesting.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that you hold yourself when you're just relaxing in that kind of classical way. Someone walks across the room, you're like, oh, they're a ballerina.
Yes, I don't walk turned out.
No. When you get going, there's an education skeleton behind the scenes.
And it's just...
You can't even undo. You couldn't even begin to undo.
I don't think I could.
It's like how I try and explain how my musical ear works to people. It's one of the hardest things to teach playing by ear because I don't know how I do it. I just do it.
You just do it. It's instinctive. Yeah, it's instinctive, and you rest in that.
But you mentioned Chance to Dance.
Yes, Chance to Dance.
Just wrapped up this project with Carolyn Bolton.
Yes, love Carolyn.
On this English National Ballet Youth Company project.
Yes.
It's going to be performed in 2 or 3 weeks, I think.
Oh, wow.
And it's been amazing watching all of the young dancers in the room. Very, very humbling. They work so hard.
They do.
It's an interesting mix of young dancers and teenagers who are there to enjoy themselves dancing.
Right.
And you can kind of see the difference between the two.
Absolutely. Most art forms, I feel like they often take more than they give. And so that personal drive to pour into it starts to become clear in that teenage period of time of like, okay, yes, I would like to pursue dance a little bit more fully, or no, I still enjoy dance, but I'm unsure if I want to take it into like higher education and things like that. So it's interesting that that starts to present itself whether people are aware of it or not. But the Chance to Dance program is in a slightly different format now, and myself and Jacob Y, who are both Chance to Dance alumni, which is great. We went to Bradford with the Royal Ballet and Opera and working with about 100 primary school children in Bradford and giving them an introduction to ballet, but also creatively. So that it's like planting little seeds. And listening to the primaries, because some of them were interviewed. The BBC was there, I know. I was like, oh my gosh, the first article, amazing. And a lot of them are saying, oh, you know, I didn't think ballet was for me, but like ballet is for everyone. Like we could do it if we want to. And I was like, this is the sort of the seed that we want people to feel, so that it's an option if you wish to do it, that you don't feel it's not for you. And so, and then we went on stage and we made these little pieces across 2 days, and they each had like 2.5 minutes. And it was based on like Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And they were just coming on, and seeing them on stage, like they really kind of got into it, and their actions, and Jacob and I are doing some other stuff in and around them and like leading them, and they're committed. They are so committed, ages between 7 and 9 years old. And it was amazing to see. And also amazing to remember that that was how I started. I was once that person, that young person in my coloured t-shirt, just like on stage doing like a skip and like telling some stories. And now that one seed has allowed me to still be in the industry now, building a variety of different things. So it's nice to be on programmes like Chance to Dance, being able to guest facilitate, because ultimately it's like we want to keep the momentum of dance going. And that starts when people are younger. And it starts with the idea of feeling like dance is something that is available for everyone.
Across all ages. I mean, talking of stories, I'm sure Carolyn won't mind me mentioning that she said on the second day she walked into space and all of the young kids were kind of just very quietly getting on with practicing what they'd done the day before, and that she was sort of in tears.
Yeah, she was.
At how self-motivated they were. They were like,
honestly,
I understand this is my chance to dance and I'm taking it.
Yeah. It was funny because I joined Carolyn that afternoon and she was like, Monique, I was crying at 9 a.m. in the morning. But it's remarkable, actually, how willing and determined they were to do well and present their best version of whatever it is that they were doing. So for them to collectively, like for Carolyn to walk into the studio and they're kind of set up, ready to go from the beginning, like, you just got here, we're waiting for you. Can we go?
Primary school age.
Yeah. That particular group, the year 4 and year 6, came to watch their final day. And Laura Bray, who's kind of like spearheading a lot of that on the Chance to Dance programme, just put it out to these primary school kids, and they were like, what did you think about what you just saw your peers do? One of them was like, it's breathtaking. I was like, what do you know about breathtaking? But I love. And so I was like, it's mesmerising, very smooth, very this. I was like, But they were also invested. And they was like, would you like to do something like this? And this is the people who weren't on the programme. So many hands, so many more than I had expected. Very sweet. It was so sweet and so nice. They were all like, Miss Monique, hi Miss Monique. Yes. And I'm like, hey, hello. Yeah, it's very, very, very sweet. So I really enjoy projects and things like that because I know the impact that just one conversation or seeing one person who you're like, whoa, you're amazing. Like I remember who that was for me. It's dancer called Linda Celeste Sims. She's from Alvin Ailey American Dance Theatre. She doesn't dance for them anymore, I don't think. They performed at Sadler's Wells. And at Arts Ed, our teacher Natalie Barron was amazing at facilitating a lot of trips to go and see different dance works, and I'm really grateful. And they did this piece. I cannot remember the name of the piece. It wasn't Revelations, but it was another one. Revelations is like what they're most known for globally. And she just did this développé to the side, and her leg was just like, it wasn't even about the height of the leg, even though it was very high, but it's like the control and like the assurance, the confidence, and then everything was with finesse. And I saw that and I was like, that's what I want to do. And up until that point, I hadn't seen anyone who looked like me on stage doing that technical work. And I just, because I wasn't very flexible when I was younger, I just didn't think, I was like, you know, I'm just not really built like that. I haven't seen anyone. So I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh. And the next day, I was like trying to get my leg higher. I was like, I need to work really hard. I need to do this. And I've experienced firsthand what that can do as like a catalyst.
Yeah.
So it's just like, even if that is for one student or two or three, that's 3 new dancers coming into the industry and offering whatever they have.
Yeah, that's quite a good percentage turnover.
Yeah, I would say so, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they've got to make it through training and all of that type of stuff first, you know?
It reminds me a bit of when I was 6, maybe I hadn't even turned 6, and I was at this cutesy little gymnastics class, which were just people doing forward rolls.
So fun.
And, you know, lots of crash mats, and it was a fun time. And then this one session, it's so weird, it's one of my earliest memories. These 2 people walked in and they kind of chatted with the coach, and they just like stood and watched for the rest of the session.
Yeah.
And I was just like, who were they?
Yeah.
I had no idea. I couldn't conceive who they were at that age. And so I just pointed my toes.
Yes, right.
And did my best. And then at the end of the session, they pulled me to one side and said, hello, we're from this proper gymnastics club, and would you like to join? And I was like, yes.
I would love to.
I didn't know what it was, but I just had this like instinct.
Just like
that this is a chance. Yeah, because I don't really remember why I was even in the gymnastics class. It's probably because it was a compromise that my dad had pulled me out of ballet and my mum wanted me to do something.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And it's funny how intuitive a lot of children are as well. And it's, you know, you might think, well, they won't know that this is important. They will be able to sense that moment of like, who's that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to point my toes extra hard.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this front walkover. I don't know if you were doing front walkovers. I've no idea.
I don't know if I was.
I've never been able to do one, so I have no idea. That's the one I remember. It's really interesting to see when something has been sparked inside, how they can take ownership of it. And it's just for us, as we go through the industry, to remember that ownership of it as well. Otherwise, you just think, my leg could be higher, I need to do this, or I only did 1 turn today, I should have done 2, this person's doing 3, this person's doing 4 turns, and you know, you get inundated with a lot of information of like, you have to be like this, okay, this is my time, I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to have a good time, and I'm going to do my best.
Choose to be satisfied.
Exactly, which is very hard, but hey.
Yeah. I was going to ask about your compulsion behind doing a podcast.
Okay.
Maybe briefly.
Yeah.
Because I realise I have a compulsion to do this. I'm quite quiet, but I've realised this is a nice little frame for me to overshare, as I want to do, in a nice little box that I can control.
Absolutely.
What is it for you?
I would say I'm also on the more introverted side, and in my day-to-day I'm naturally more quiet, but then if there's something that I'm really intrigued by or really enjoying the conversation, this like inner bubbly sort of desire to just be like curious to know more, and what do you think about this, and what about this, and what about this, and that's just came from the desire to have more conversations about the industry and be like, do you know what, we don't need to do this individually, let's do it together, let's just have a chat. That's literally who it is. I was like, let's just have a chat. And once I started the conversation with people, the different guests that I've had, it's been so nice, actually, because then sometimes certain topics come up that I wasn't expecting, and that's really nice, or new bits of information or perspectives. And it's also quite nice when there's perspectives that challenge my own as well. And because then it's like, interesting. I love that you believe that, but for me, it's this. And then like, do we come to an understanding? Do we not come to an understanding? How many people share this perspective? How many people are in this? And I'm just like, ooh. I don't know. It's like my mind just gets like fired up. I'm like, this is great because it's
Yeah.
like I don't feel like I need to agree with you.
I feel like
but
I've witnessed that on one of your episodes.
yes, yeah. But
And
it's
everyone else should go and watch them all to see which one it was.
Yes, there's only 5. There's only 5 in season 1, but
Yeah.
season 2 is en route,
Yes,
which is very
exciting.
exciting. But it sparked with that specific episode, and it was the episode I had with Jamil Lawrence. We had a great conversation actually, and it was good because we presented polarizing opinions to an extent,
Yeah.
but it left a lot of grey space for people to also form their own. And it also showed that we're in the same industry, like we're actually good friends. You know, we support each other. So it's not a like, oh, I can't stand you, but it's like, no, we don't actually have to agree. And it's interesting that you want to build and pursue the industry in this way, and I want to build and pursue it in that way. This is the platform to show that you can do both, and you can do neither, and you can create your own as well. I was like, that's the whole point of the podcast, that it's not like, oh, me and my friends just having a little like we agree on everything type situation. It can just be like, oh no, because it challenged me to think about what he was saying. And how does that work with my perspective? And do I agree, or do I agree to an extent? Or and that's like, these are the things I'm interested in, because I'm just like, oh, I want to see how your brain works. That's really fascinating to me. Like, how did you land at this? And I felt like by speaking to him, I understand more about the projects he's pursuing. This makes a lot more sense now that I've spoken to you, so I can understand how you're navigating the industry. That's what it's for, really. So.
And however you arrived at your own podcast in order to start it, just to say that it's very important that it exists.
Oh,
I'm really
thank
glad
you.
it exists.
I appreciate
And
that.
I'm not even a dancer, but you know, I'm aligned with dance.
Yes.
And I'm very happy to be so.
Yes.
And I've written quite a lot for dance in the past few years, weirdly.
Yeah.
Most of my kind of external commissions have been
Dance
for
related.
Yeah, for Chris's pieces at Sadler's.
Yeah, to
And
the
you were
ocean
one of
floor.
them,
Yes, I was
yeah.
like, yeah. I've got your CD actually.
Yeah, so good.
I've got your CD and album.
You know, talking about the Adams Company, that was almost acting. I mean, there were elements of it that
Yeah.
were kind of dance theatre.
No, absolutely. So the first time doing theatrical work was with Theo. Then the next time, actually, to be able to present emotions that weren't like, this upbeat kind of like,
Camp.
yeah, it was into the ocean floor. That's the first time I had to cry on stage.
Ooh.
Yeah, and that was actually a really necessary process for me, and working with Chris was great because actually Chris is like a generator of movement.
He is incredible.
I know. So like in the studio, Chris would just generate material on the spot, and creatively I always found that really hard to do. So it was amazing to be like, wow, like this bank of material to just try and be like, maybe this isn't working, that's not working. And I really remember coming down to one of the scenes, and Chris very gently was just like, yeah, you know, it's quite emotional and all this stuff. And then I tried a version where I could feel not a resistance to crying, but like I was like, I'm only going to go there if it's requested. I remember that's how I felt. And then Chris was like, I think we need to try with just like upping the emotions a little bit. And I just thought, sure. And it was like a little key that was just like, oh. And I was like, okay, like
permission.
Yeah, it was kind of like that essentially, and it was amazing, like very vulnerable to kind of do that in a space. And then what does that recovery time look like, and how do I make this sincere so that it comes across and supports Chris's creative vision for the piece, and how does this translate to the second circle at Sadler's Wells? You know, like, will they even be able to see that? I don't know, but then does that need to be felt? So, I mean, again, it was like another key that was just like, oh, I didn't realise I was capable of doing that. That's quite exciting. And then performing that on stage with the energy of the audience. I really remember finishing that and I was like drained, because I think I put too much into it in terms of personally, from an emotional standpoint, but I feel like it read on the audience side. And someone at the end just went, bravo! And I was like, whoa! I was like, that feels amazing, thank you. I appreciate that you appreciated the piece and like everything that was like, went in. So it's just, I don't know, with each bit of the career, each time I'm trying something new with the podcast, with creating, with movement directing, it's like a little key. That's just like, oh yeah, capable of doing this, why not?
Yeah.
It's quite fun.
And at the same time, you don't want to leave the stage a husk.
Yes.
As I remember you saying in another episode.
Yeah, you can't, because people are like, leave it all empty on the stage. How am I supposed to go home if I left everything? That's such a wild thing to me. So I just was like learning, because like Romeo and Juliet was another tear-jerky like show. It didn't require tears, but for the
emotive.
Yeah, I think for what felt sincere to me at the time, would be to kind of bring to that place where it felt and looked like sort of like watery-eyed, and if there were tears then great, and if there weren't then that's also fine. But understanding how to do that whilst protecting myself so that I wouldn't leave like super drained at the end of each show.
An 8-show a week.
For an 8-show
Oh
week.
my
Thankfully
gosh.
I never did 8 shows in a row, 6
Okay.
at max, but
Okay.
yeah. Some people definitely did do 8 shows though.
That's hardcore.
It's super, super hardcore. Would have been like crawling at the
Yeah.
end, but we didn't get there, so that's fine.
Yeah, thank goodness. And you were talking about Chris's choreographic style
Yeah.
of just working in the moment, in the room
Yes.
with that person.
Yeah,
How do you challenge yourself? Because I know you did something recently with Laban.
I did. And this is actually the perfect transition because
yeah.
I was telling Chris, because Chris also did some film work for that piece, which was
Yes.
amazing, to kind of see the process. I normally pre-choreograph things specifically for the project, but I do it in the comfort of my own space.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the creative juices just naturally flow. And I always find it a little bit too exposing, trying to create on the spot, and it sometimes makes me feel really stagnant, and then I'm like, I don't know what to do, and that feels really intense. But this is the first process over 5 weeks with a bunch of students that I'd never met before, where I created in the studio, on the spot. And it was scary, and then lots of times they were like, what do we do next? And I was like, not a clue. Not a clue, I don't know. I was like, we'll look at that tomorrow. Or let's have a 15-minute break and then we'll come back to that. And actually it was a way of letting go, not feeling like, oh, it has to be like this and it has to be like this and it has to be like this. Each day was like, I'm going to go in with this loose idea and let's see what happens. And I think that, again, that was another moment for me to be like, oh, you know, creativity can look like this too, for me, personally. I don't have to be like, this is how I create and this is what works. It was like, no, try this process. And sometimes you'll be able to generate a lot of material, sometimes you won't. And both of those things are fine. So yeah, that Laban piece, I'm really happy with it. It's really proud. It's called Quicksilver. It was like based on the sort of chemical properties of liquid mercury as like a starting point to create some movement as a group. It had 16 lovely, lovely dancers and made for a really wonderful process. And I was so proud because I was like, this is the first time I've done a process in this way.
Yeah.
And I'm still able to create dance. The students still thankfully had a really wonderful experience and they absolutely smashed the shows as well. So it's another key that I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
you know,
Well done.
it's okay to not know what you're doing and still be a creative and still have a process and still have an outcome. So a sort of behind the scenes process video will be on the Jona Dance YouTube channel, which is where our Candid Convos with Jona Dance also lives. So it's
just
like,
subscribe to that.
yeah, just subscribe.
Naturally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it will also be on our social media and website. Just a way to kind of see the waves of the process. And
Oh, that's so vulnerable, doing something brand new,
Yeah.
a challenge, and then also documenting it and sharing it.
But actually I was so
Such a
proud.
gift to us all, I think.
I mean, I'm actually so proud. I've only seen like a draft of the video so far, and honestly, I've watched it like 5 times.
Yeah?
Yeah, I really have. Because
That's a good sign.
Yeah,
You
but
can
I-
rewatch yourself.
Yeah, and especially because I'm hearing my voice
Yeah.
throughout it. I just enjoyed the fact that I didn't know, and that was the reality of certain things, rather than feeling like I had to present this like well-crafted thing and know what I'm doing at every step.
Yeah.
There was something that was quite freeing, I guess, or just like, wow, I can see my journey, because I used to want to just present like, no, this is fine, I'm doing really well, like, this is okay, I've got it in control, and now I'm a little bit more like, not a clue.
And that's okay.
Yeah, it is,
It's
one
very
day at a
inspiring.
time.
It reminds me, there was a period of my life that I've totally shelved and kind of forget about,
Yeah.
where I did a learning collaborative composition, in other words, like composing on the spot with a group
Oh,
at the Royal
wow.
College of Music, which I did after my Masters. I
Yeah.
kind of was trying to get into music education.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you had to turn up and make music on the spot, live, as you know, nothing had happened before.
How was that?
It was very difficult because I definitely never turned up without a plan
Mm.
in the way that you were describing
Yeah.
working on your choreography. I've tried over the years, you know, kind of band situations, like coming up with stuff, and my takeaway is always, I just need to go away and write something myself.
Yes,
I don't
really
think I've
relate.
actually successfully achieved what you're describing,
This is the first
and I'm
time,
not really compelled to try again.
but I understand that. I can relate so much to what you just said. This is exactly kind of how I felt. I was faced with students who were looking at me like, what we're going to do.
What now?
And we've got 4 hours. And I was like, well, I've got to do something.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we'll play around, we'll do some tasks. I'm a big advocate for playing games in studio.
Yeah.
So like group games and things like that. Because then I'm just like, yeah, it encourages a sense of play.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of guards does this. Not in a sense that, oh, we're vulnerable. It just means we relax a little bit into the space. And then I'm like, let's try. And we had certain tasks that just didn't work. But then one person did this one thing and I was like, that triggered an idea. And I was like, oh, what happens if we try this? And they got very used to me being like, so we're going to just try this idea. And they'll be like, is it fast? And I'll probably most likely be like, yes, it is. You know? And I'm like, I think we can go faster.
Yeah.
Let's try this. Or can you go higher? Can you do this?
Yeah.
Can you add another term? And it just became this whole thing of like, oh, I didn't think I was capable of creating like that. So now I'm like, it's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible.
You're going to go there anytime soon? I mean, because I know you've got some time and space.
I do have some time and space.
Time and space.
Literally.
Coming up.
Literally time and space. This is happening at Sadler's Wells East.
Yeah.
It's a commission with Sadler's Wells overarching for literally time and space to play around and create and
A gift.
yeah, it's wonderful. And again, another unexpected sort of thing. I applied, I knew there'd be lots of people applying, so I just was like, if I get it, fantastic, but if not, I understand there's a lot of people. So receiving that commission was like, there's no way, you know, I get to just have this space to be creative, to focus just on Jona Dance. I've got a live musician coming in who works a lot with like polyrhythms and polymeters. That's something new that I just learnt.
Yes.
Yes, which
I learned about that at university.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've done it myself since.
I mean, I don't have any claim to any of those things, but from a movement perspective, there's so many like layers and things to play with, which I'm super excited. And I have an overarching idea of the things I'd like to explore, but the day-to-day, I'm probably going to leave a little bit more open with a few. So a combination of some planned, some free, and then kind of see how it goes. That's the first 2 weeks of March, so I'm excited. Yeah, to have that. We've got dancers coming in the space. It just feels really nice to be like, wow, you're contracted by Jona Dance. That's amazing to come into the space and create, not an external thing. And there are some lovely creative opportunities coming up over the upcoming months. I'm not sure exactly when it is. My schedule, I have not looked past March, to be honest. It's exciting that there's momentum building, and Jona Dance has received its first international commission as well. Ooh. So to bring some of the style and create on a group of dancers abroad, and that's just, it's like, wow.
Work.
Yes,
Yeah.
brand new work, and again, free reign to use whichever music I wish and create whatever topic and things. It's like, it's exciting, you know, to think that I once didn't think I was creative.
Yeah.
And
crazy.
now there's a company, and there's now hopefully international opportunities as well as UK-based opportunities to do the very thing I thought I wasn't able to do. So just rolling with
So
it.
excited for you.
It's fun.
I was going to say it's just the beginning, but it's not just the beginning.
Feels like it to an extent though.
I say that generously, as in this is just the beginning of the kind of like stratospheric trajectory.
I hope so. I mean, I'll just say again, season 2 of Candid Combos with Jona Dance will be coming out over the coming months, so maybe summertime. Feels right, we have a winter season and a summer season. That makes a little bit more sense. But I'm excited, I've got 5 more episodes coming, and new conversations, new topics, new people. So it's nice to be able to be creating work for live performance, but then also having this element of the behind the scenes of the industry. And then who knows, there could be some other things coming up. Hopefully some more. Yes, exactly. Some more film stuff maybe. More Judge Judy.
I hope there's more Judge Judy.
I love Judge Judy, she's great.
It seems to me that you've just got it all worked out.
In theory. On paper it looks like that.
It's very inspiring.
It's each day as it comes, to be honest. And it's also application writing, it's also looking for new opportunities, it's also receiving rejections and also receiving unexpected, yeses and things. So in theory, it's like, it's super planned out, but it's also, there's lots of pivots, there's lots of, cool, this is how I thought this was going to work. It's not working like this. How do we make something else work as well? So I don't want to present an image that is like, this, as much as I personally would love the trajectory of like, I'm going to do this and then this and then this.
Well, I see what you're saying. When I say you've got it worked out, what I mean is you're doing all of the hard internal work, like all of these realizations about
right.
flexibility and versatility, you seem to have unlocked the key, which is not to be perfect.
Yeah, which is very hard for me because
Yeah.
it's like I grew up wanting to present
Exactly.
an image of something perfect.
So that's why you're onto something, I think.
Oh, actually, no, I'll
That's
take
what's
that.
inspiring.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I don't need you to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's less interesting.
Yeah.
It's more of a wall.
I also don't think it could be perfect if I tried.
Well, no, it's not.
I don't think it could be. It'd always be something. But learning to roll with the punches and like manage expectations has
Yeah.
been a big thing. Yeah, and some days more successfully than others. But then the most important thing is you get up and go again the next day.
Yeah.
You know?
You ask a nice question at the end of your podcast about what advice you might give.
Mm.
And I'm going to say specifically to younger dancers or younger choreographers or younger entrepreneurs, or you can answer whichever question you prefer.
The question I ask myself is like, what if it does work? Like, it might not, but what if it does? Like, that's the sentence that I've got at the moment as a kind of like motivation if I'm feeling a little bit discouraged by something, to just try, be open to trying, because it might not work, but what if it does? And then allowing yourself to be open to the if it does part, and knowing that that will then lead you down the path that you're supposed to be on, that hopefully brings you fulfillment as well. Yeah.
I feel like this has been an incredible therapy session. All of the reframing, and positive perspectives. And
Trying, you know.
Love it. But you work incredibly hard.
Thank you.
And you deserve every success that you've had.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's so nice. It's so kind.
As long as I've known you, I've known that. And one final question. For you, deep down,
Yes.
what's the point?
The point is that movement, I'll use your words, deep down, is a big part of life and living for me, whether it's walking the everyday, engaging with other people, and that is the source of my passion, my industry, the path that I've made. And so it's about sharing the things I've learned through my movement journey with others to hopefully encourage them on their own movement journey, whether that's professionally or just in everyday life. So it's, sharing life, essentially, because movement, I think, is integral to how we experience the world. Yeah.
Wow. Mic drop. You're clearly living your values and you're acting them.
Trying to, yeah.
And that.
I appreciate it. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks for having me on. This has been honestly such a lovely conversation, and actually nice to remember different parts of the experiences that we've shared together as well. No, but it's good because it's just like, there's been so many like wonderful intersections where it's like, it's like this and this and this and this. So thanks for having me. It's been lovely.
Been my absolute pleasure. So inspiring. And everybody should go and listen to your podcast.
Yes, please.
And check out Jona Dance on YouTube.
Yes, indeed, or our website.
What's your website?
It's www.jonadance.com.
Easy.
Super straightforward.
That's an easy win.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and review this podcast. And if you like it, share it with your friends or on social media. You can find me on social platforms at Deep Down with Jordan Hunt and at Jordan Hunt Music. Deep Down uses bits of my music from my song Ocean Floor, and you can listen to my music on all streaming services. I'd love to hear from you via DM or via my website, jordan-hunt.com, if any of these experiences resonated with you, and there you can sign up to the mailing list for announcements and updates. Thank you so much for listening.